Reasons for divorce. We all hear, oh, the number one reason people get divorced is what?
Idiot husband.
Oh man, that was a lot at once. I heard you first. What was it?
Finance.
It's in the top 3, but it's not number 1. Okay, so I heard money. What else? Infidelity is number 2. The number 1 reason people get divorced. Horns in the air! Come on! Weak. The neighbors can't hear you. Come on. All right, that was that. All right, my name is Chris. Today we're going to talk about my journey to FI following my divorce. Divorce sometimes, it's not a fun topic to talk about. So it's not always a fun topic to talk about, right? When people go through divorce, there's a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions. There's anger, you're anxious, you're sad, right? It's not an easy topic to talk about. Divorce in America, it's still a thing. It is. Up to 50% of first marriages still end in divorce. It's kind of sad, but it happens. Believe it or not, second marriages are even worse. Some studies said up to 67% of second marriages end in divorce. So in 2019, there was like 2.2 million marriages that equaled about 830 divorces. That's a lot of anxiety. It's a lot of stress, especially about finances. Reasons for divorce. We all hear, oh, the number 1 reason people get divorced is what?
Idiot husband.
Oh man, that was a lot at once. I heard you first. What was it?
Financial.
It's in the top 3, but it's not number 1. Do you want a book or a hat? All right.
I need this tonight.
Okay, so I heard money. What else? Say it. Infidelity number 2. Infidelity is number 2. The number 1 reason people get divorced. Communication. Was that you? Communication is number 1. So that's crazy. I mean, again, you always hear, oh, money is the number 1 problem. It's not. It's number 3, right? But this is another interesting thing. The median duration of that first marriage. So we know 50% of marriages, the first marriages will end in divorce. How long do you think they last? 6 years, 7 years? What, 1 year?
Too long.
8 years. Median is 8 years. Who said, I heard somebody say 8, didn't I? Who said 7? I heard somebody say 7. You want a book? But keep in mind, not all marriages are bad. Sometimes they can be a good thing. You're getting out of abuse. You're getting out of toxic situations. If you or someone else you know is experiencing a toxic situation, please reach out to domestic violence helpline. All right, so the stages of grief or the stages of divorce. Now, this isn't like a linear path. You're not going to just experience these along a linear path, but you at some point will experience these feelings or emotions. Sometimes you go back and forth, right? I often did when I was going through my divorce. The first is denial. You kind of just avoid discussing divorce altogether. This isn't, it's not happening, right? You invest heavily in the marriage then, right? Maybe you weren't really that vested in the relationship at the time, but oh, shoot, now things are on the rocks. I'm going to shower with, I'm going to do everything I can, right, to invest in that. We also go through this anger phase. We get pissed. We get angry. We get mad, and we start to blame the others, right? We blame our spouse for everything. At some point, you're going to go through this bargaining. You're going to try to bargain with your spouse. I did this. I really did. There was a time when I was bargaining, like, I'll shift careers. I'll quit my job. I don't travel as much. I will contribute more with the kids. I'll do everything. I was trying to bargain, right? That is a stage that we experience when we go through this, right? It's anything to make things right. Another thing, when we've kind of come to the realization that this is inevitable, this will happen, sadness creeps in, right? We start to hurt. We feel sadness and depression. And this is a real thing. This is when I first started talking to a therapist. I started to get myself, my entire life was different, right? We're together for a long time. And so depression creeps in. That's going to be one of these stages. So what happens is now you've kind of accepted the fact you're going to take on this new identity. You're now an ex. You're an ex-husband, you're an ex-wife, you're an ex-spouse. You're now a single parent, right? You need to accept and take on this new identity. And that's when you finally reach that point of acceptance. But I like to add a couple more stages in here, and that's shock and rebuilding. Shock comes even kind of like before denial. This is when you're like, whoa, what just happened? And sometimes you make knee-jerk reactions, rash decisions, sometimes with our finances. We want to prevent that. We don't want to make any rash decisions or financial decisions when we're in shock. Shock's kind of a weird stage because you're drifting back and forth from numbness, right? And panic. Like, what's going to happen? I went through this. Can I afford to pay all my bills and my mortgage and take care of the kids and all this stuff just with one person? I don't know, right? So you're kind of going back and forth and you're in shock. And one of the big things in that shock phase is, it's crazy. People going through divorce, they continually search for the reason why. Why is it happening? Well, you know what? And this one, therapy really helped me with this. You're never going to know. You're never going to know the reason why it happens. So you got to stop continually looking for that reason why, accept and move on. And I like to add this last one, rebuilding. And that's why we're here today. I'm going to talk through my story of rebuilding your life. You want to move forward with optimism and hope and really build a happy future. And that's what we're going to go through. So let's go ahead and look at where I started. So my little background. So I was married for 15 years. We were together for 19 years, high school sweethearts. The entire time we're together, I never, ever looked at my finances. I hated it. Money was so scary to me. That was a true la 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 type of moment. My wife at the time paid every bill, balanced every checkbook. I had no idea where the money was going. I didn't want to know how much money we had, how much money we didn't have. I didn't want to know how much the groceries were, right? It wasn't until after I got divorced, I found out we were spending $160 a month on like Dish Network that I never watched, right? I just didn't want to know about money. So I started at the very basics, the very fundamentals of personal finance, right? I remember Googling how to budget because I had no idea what it was, right? And I really started to then track my spending and I started to learn, I started to read. Another big thing I had to do that was just terrifying for me is I had to refinance the home because our family home, she left and now I had to live there with one income and there was just no way I could have made that work at the time. And then the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway, making the good out of a bad situation was I paid attention, became intentional about my finances, and it changed my life. Let's take a look at my numbers over that timeline. Now, again, I've never really shared, vulnerability. That's why we're here, right? So I'm going to share these numbers. Let's start with the net worth. Now, I'm one that also, I know some people don't include equity in their home as part of their net worth. I do. And so, again, this is kind of what it looks like. So again, keeping track back then, I wasn't really that great with it, but around 2016 or so, I estimated with around $380K when I started. And that was because I had the equity in my home at the time. And I had about $100,000 that I kept for my 401k. So my 401k, I had about 200 grand. I split my 401k. My ex-wife got $100,000 in my 401k. And then I had been investing in my 401k. At the time when I first started investing, I had no idea what I was investing in. I just know that I had a 401k, right? And I was doing like just up to the match at the time. So I started 2016 and you can see steady growth along the way. not only my portfolio, but also the rental properties as well. And you can see how that really starts to compound the growth and how I break that down my portfolio. So right now, this is about 2.8 net worth right now. My portfolio, you can see here that it started in 2016 because I had just around 200K in the portfolio. That was my investments and then the $100,000 from my dad's inherited IRA. But basically you can see the growth continuing to go. And again, that's because I was, again, just dumping 60, 70% of everything I made. And yeah, there were times when I didn't, you're living frugally and you're making some sacrifices here and there. And it's so funny, my uncle would ask me to like do this thing or go out to dinner this time, whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm making food at home. And he's like, man, you're the cheapest rich guy I know. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't think I'm rich, but I'm not cheap. I'm frugal, right? It's like, I got eyes on the prize, So that's kind of how the numbers break down. And now what I want to do is go through, again, some things to consider if you or someone maybe thinking about going through experiencing divorce. Here's some financial considerations. The number one thing to think about is the children. Not directly finance related, but kind of. Every conversation you have with your spouse, if they have legal representation, you're going to get, all these people are going to come at you. You're going to get friends and family and in-laws and all these people coming at you. Whenever you have a conversation, talk about you're going to do whatever is best for the kids. Make sure everyone knows it. And it's not only from like a custody thing, but it can be a financial thing. I mean, obviously they're going to have food, shelter, clothing, that type of thing. But think about school expenses, healthcare expenses, sports programs, all that stuff. When it comes up, well, what's best for the kids? Make sure everyone understands that. Okay. And yes, those are my two adorable children right there. Okay. Another thing, talk about how you're going to proceed with filing. It's going to be awkward and weird, but I really do encourage those people to talk with your spouse and really ask about how can we go through this without legal representation. There are tons of low cost, flat fee, even in some states, self-filing options. That's what I did. Again, state of Minnesota, it's actually almost, I would argue, too easy to get divorced. It is. You go to the Minnesota judicial website, you start the process, you fill out everything, you add some supportive documents, right? A public attorney reviews it for completeness. They don't give you advice, but they make sure it's right. They came back to me and said, hey, you know what? This looks awesome. Your parenting schedule, why don't you add like special days? Mother's Day, Father's Day. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. You know what I mean? Like I didn't even think about it. And then, once you're done, you just pay the $480 and you file for divorce. You can do it. You can do it on your own, self-file. So if you can do this without legal representation, it can save thousands and thousands of dollars. I have a friend that's going through right now, just paid $3,000 just for the first initial retainer. The average contested divorce now costs around 11 grand, but I don't believe that. I mean, that's when I tried to research it because I know people that are paying so much more. So just know if you're not willing to work together and you get legal representation, it costs a lot more. This is a time where I think it's really important to really review your income. Understand how much you're making, pre-tax, post-tax, everything. Know what you're working with, because are you going to need temporary living arrangements? Are you going to move out and rent an apartment right away? Let's say you share a car. Oh crap. Now I need to buy another used car because now I need to get around, right? I mean, I need to rent an apartment now. Okay. I'll go buy an inflatable mattress to sleep on, right? Know how much money you're making. Know what you have to work with. I think it's really important to do that. And then also understand, because you don't even know at this point, are you going to need to spend that on legal costs and that type of thing? And this is where, one thing that I did that was really helpful, again, truly track your expenses and cut out all that unnecessary expenses. And I'm going to say it, the freaking $4 latte every day, like do it, because you really need as much take-home pay as you can at this time, because you don't know what you're going to need as you're going through this weird limbo state of going through the divorce process. And so I encourage, I mean, again, I did this. I cut everything that was unnecessary. I mean, including like Hulu and Netflix and Amazon and, all those subscription services. You got to do it. It's really a reflection on needs versus wants, right? You're going through this process. What are my baseline needs? You can add those wants in later once you know what you're dealing with and you have stability. This is going to be super weird, but I encourage you to discuss with the spouse living arrangements. If you can save tons of money, if while you're going through the process, cohabitate. Be roommates if you can. It's not uncommon to move into the guest bedroom. If you can, move downstairs. This is what I did. For a year, I lived in my basement. I had a pull-out sofa. There was a bathroom down there. No problem. I would get up, get ready, go to work, right? The cool thing too is we were both there. Our kids were there. It really worked. It worked for us. So it saved tons of money. No one had to initially quickly knee-jerk reaction, go rent an apartment, all that stuff. So while you're working with the permanent housing solution, try to live together. I mean, you guys are adults. Like, just get along. Again, maybe my ex-wife and I got along so that we could actually do it, but I really do encourage people to do that. Another great thing to do is review the investment accounts. Because sometimes, again, this was so new to me. I didn't know what we had. I had old 401ks that have now IRAs, and I didn't know where they were and what was, it's a good idea to review all your accounts, retirement investment accounts, brokerage accounts, is that joint accounts, individual accounts, what accounts do you have? Because you know what? You're going to need to know because all of this gets split. You're going to share it. So you need to know what you have. Another really good idea here too is it's a great time. I mean, I encourage people to do it all the time, but review your beneficiaries too, because you know what? Just because you're getting divorced, your spouse is still the caretaker of your children if you die, right? You may still want to leave your ex-spouse as a beneficiary on those accounts. I encourage you just to kind of review that as well. And this, again, some people may not agree, but this is also a time too, you're going through that weird phase and you need to know how much money I need to live on. And single income now for me, I actually paused my investment contributions for a time. I went and paused my 401k contributions because one, then my take home pay was more to live on, right? But then it also lessened, depends how you feel about it, but it lessened the amount of the contribution going into the account that I would have to split later. I know it might be a little selfish, right? I get it, but that was the strategy that I went through. Another thing to think about, remember when you get through divorce, you're going to be splitting assets, financial assets, physical assets, all the things. And it's meant to divide things fairly, but just remember, fair isn't always equal, right? I remember my wife came back to the house after she left and she started putting Post-it notes on things. This is mine. I'm taking this. It was a thing. It was a thing. For months, I had no bedroom set. I had a mattress on the ground. I didn't have a sofa. Yeah, dining room set was gone. So again, physical stuff's going to go. But also, again, it's important to realize too that everything is negotiable. So again, if you can get along, I mean, it's negotiable if you go through legal representation as well, but just work with your spouse and negotiate. Well, if you take this, can I take this? You can do it that way. Many states, it'll start 50-50, but you can negotiate. That's one thing we did with the larger things. She got $100,000 of my 401k. I did keep the house. At the time, I was keeping all of the debt with the house, right? So the equity wasn't even the same. It was around the same, but still it was hard, right? Because I was taking that all myself and my entire life. It was both of us, right? So just know you can negotiate everything. I mean, I lost my Xbox. I couldn't play Call of Duty anymore, right? The last thing I want to leave you guys with, it's important not to panic. It's so easy to panic, make knee-jerk reactions, rash decisions, especially around your finances. I mean, I hear stories all the time. People do it out of spite, right? They want to do it. They're vengeful. They're mean. They'll go grab, oh, this joint credit card. I'm going to go spend and spend and spend and stick my spouse with this debt, right? Don't panic. Don't do those things. You're going to hear from so many people. I just want to caution people on who you're taking advice from, because you want to know that you're doing it for the best interest of you, your kids, and you know what? Your spouse too. You know what I mean? They're going to be part of your life forever, especially if you have kids together. At some point, it's going to happen. So I just feel as though, don't panic. The situation isn't forever, right? You will get through it. That kind of wraps up this part. I just want to let you know too, again, yank out your phones, shoot this bad boy. I have everything I covered here if you guys want to get more information. There's tons of articles as well as this one up on the blog. And then I'm also available for any Q&A. Thank you, everyone.